And we are back in Peanut Gallery. We're going to do a very special Bible study. It's a Bible study special on wrestling for Jesus. So this documentary came out in 2011.
He thought it came out in like 2006.
I thought it did. I don't know why.
Back when the Jesus thing was. Remember Jesus Camp, guys? That was like 2006.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I screwed up. But also, I think it's because of the technology that they were using in 2011 that also didn't help.
Oh yeah, like that old ass computer that looked like it was 10 years old.
So anyway, but basically, what Wrestling for Jesus was a very small. Were they evangelical, Baptist? What denomination were they?
Oh, no, they were just your typical evangelical. It was an evangelical ministry.
Very southern.
That incorporated wrestling into their messages.
Yes.
And what I found out through my research... My very extensive research.
Well, wait, but before we get into like the backstage news, let's at least give them a brief synopsis of what Wrestling for Jesus was.
It was just this documentary about a guy who's dealing with his personal demons at the same time that he is trying to help other people with their own demons. So this guy
he started a wrestling promotion. He has like a bunch of other people. The crowd turnout obviously was like your typical southern backward show.
Typical high school gymnasium sort of thing.
He's dealing with his father's suicide.
Yep.
Marital
problems.
2 or 3 kids. A daytime job. So it gives you a different inside scoop of different indie promotions. Yeah. Even though it's still out of date, there were a lot of things there that were still
relevant today. Yeah.
The one thing that I did take away when I rewatched this. The wrestling was not terrible.
No, none of the wrestling actually. Like there were some parts of it that were, kind of like before an indie promotion actually wasn't bad.
Right, it was a very I funded everything for this promotion.
Like he paid cash for this, he paid cash for that kind of thing.
Right. They do cash only for the concessions, and they buy all the chips and drinks or whatever. No alcohol, obviously. But at the very end, they would have a preacher go in, and all of the fans can go to the ring.
Like they're doing an altar call, and all the fans go and all the people that are watching go to the ring.
So not all of the gimmicks were based around religion, which I actually did enjoy about it. Maybe we'll talk about the Vince Russo religion promotion as a contrast to this, because that does exist.
That might be a topic for another time.
Mm-hmm. But what I did like about it is that a lot of that preaching and stuff was after.
Right.
So at least there was that separation there. And then also the wrestlers invested in their gear.
Oh, yeah. They had some pretty nice gear. Some of them did.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is not like Drew McIntyre level gear, but at least it's not like wrestling in jeans and a T-shirt and sneakers. They had wrestling boots. They had tights or the... baggier pants that some of the wrestlers back then wore. So it's not like they just went to your local Hot Topic and got stuff. They definitely invested in their character.
Oh yeah, they did.
At least I can appreciate that.
Right.
But then they started wrestling in the backyard with a storm light illuminating everything in somebody's fucking backyard.
So there were a couple different promotions in that area. There was one that was not really competitor promotion, but kind of like an offshoot almost.
Right. So the owner of that promotion started out in Wrestling for Jesus, but he wanted to take it into a different direction.
And this is the other promotion. So there were 2 promotions at the time in this town. There was one that was Wrestling for Jesus. WFJ is actually the name of that promotion at the time. And then there was another one that had very they worked together a lot. They used a lot of the same wrestlers, but they were non-religious. They took out the religious aspect.
Right. They were just a back. They were like your stereotypical backwoods whatever.
Right. And then the reason for it was because some people could see how the issues that face the owner are starting to affect the business.
Right.
So that's what happened.
And we'll get into that later. So the guy's name was Matt.
Yes.
Obviously, dealing with a lot of other things going on.
No, it was Tim.
Was it Tim? No, Matt was the ring name of the other guy.
Yes. No, it's Tim. It's T-Bone.
Yes, T-Bone. That's right. So they had different characters and all that fun stuff. There was a serious wrestler, Matt Cruz, who got a very serious neck injury, and they did like one last hurrah show, and your general like militia garage, whatever, and a decent turnout, and everyone was like having a good time. I'm like, I could like talk shit, but at least they were trying to do something, and it was like it looked like they were having fun with it, so at least there was that. Oh God, what else? I feel like the reason that we watched this was because of the religious part of it.
Yeah, but really it kind of got a little bit deeper than just the religious aspects of it. I think it did a good job with telling his story, I think, from the perspective of not just himself, but all the people that were around him at the time.
Right.
So at the end of the day, T-Bone, who was the owner of Wrestling for Jesus, had to sell all of his stuff.
Because another kid came into the world, so he had to make do with what he could.
Right, so he had to sell the ring, he had to sell all the gear and stuff, and then he gets into a domestic disturbance with his then wife, but then later
and then she lied.
Ex-wife, lied about some problems.
And the kids were actually in danger at the mother's house, so they actually found like lice in their hair and stuff, and he was using a lice comb, and at first I was like, laughing at it, but then they actually like had a connection with the guy because like he has 3 daughters. Well, there were 2, but then one was there after because they came back 1 year after. He went from like this terrible little trailer to a decently sized house,
and this is all taking place somewhere between Augusta, Georgia, and Columbia, South Carolina. So this is bumblefuck, like swamp nowhere kind of thing.
This is a born from the cradle to the grave life for South Carolinian
pretty
dude
much.
too.
And so they probably didn't have a lot of money. I could tell through my very brief market research there were 2 Dollar Generals in town, not just one. It's one of those rare tours, which is a really good indicator for how poor an area is.
The income. I guarantee you, if anybody is making $30,000 in that town, they're going to be more on the higher echelon.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Yeah. If they're making $35,000 a year, they're probably the richest person in that town.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Very, very backwoods, grass roads kind of thing. The guy bought his own ring.
Yep.
He had all of the wrestlers doing everything. So they set up the ring. They did all the promo shoots.
Yep.
They did everything. And, after watching it, continuing to go, these people are passionate. And they worked and they were trained.
Yeah.
So it's not like, we're just taking anybody from the streets and bringing them in.
No, they actually go through. I think there's probably some sort of program or something where they have to train and learn. Because I think the guy had another ring, because T-Bone had a ring set up in his own backyard where he would train the wrestlers. So he had another ring in his backyard where he would go and train the wrestlers before they go out in front of crowds and stuff.
And I'm pretty sure they had to go to like a school and get verified by a person.
Probably not.
Oh, you don't think so?
No,
I thought they did. I thought they did.
I don't think it's that bad, but definitely training before they go on. I mean, they definitely knew their stuff when they got in there.
Right. It's like, okay, the wrestling, it's not WWE-esque quality by a country mile, ironically speaking.
Right.
But I thought that, there was some stuff I thought, the character play could have been a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
The biker dude was probably the best just because he was a biker, so he just cranked it up to 11. But I thought that the wrestling was okay.
Yeah.
It's like, if I have literally nothing else to do and I've already jerked off 8 times, maybe I would like dabble in it and bring in a flask.
Right.
Because they didn't have drinks there. But then the problem is that, we're going to have a preacher go in. It's like, what he was saying was the most, I've never heard a preacher like that.
Oh my God, it was so bad. I mean, it was bad stuff that oh my God.
It's like wrestling was good, characters were fine because they did not incorporate religion at all.
And they bring in Jesus.
Yes, and then they have a preacher going, well, what were some of the snippets that we just died on?
Oh God.
Peanut Gallery, I told you to put in notes, but you didn't.
Well, you know what? I'm trying to figure out what kinds of things they were talking about.
There were some juicy nuggets in there. There was one about marriage.
There was.
I do remember that one.
Oh yes, so we actually the crew followed him into his church.
Yep.
And so they talked about the differences between a Christian and a non-Christian marriage.
That's right.
Where it's like, not a Christian marriage better than a non-Christian marriage, because with non-Christian marriages they don't have Jesus at the center. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the point, you idiots. That's kind of that kind of differentiates you. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have a religion without Jesus, non-Christian. Yeah, of course, duh. And then we got to see his church as well. I could not find the church that he belonged to.
I'm pretty sure it's torn down.
So I could not do any theological like scathing of it.
I guarantee you, based on their location and stuff, they're very evangelical.
It probably is an evangelical church,
Yep.
but they're like, this is a town with like 25 churches, okay?
Right.
Everyone there goes to church.
Right.
It's one of those areas in the world where they ask you what church you go to before they ask you your name.
Yep. It's most certainly.
Yep.
And then, I mean, there were a couple of good, a feel-good story. The biker guy had, I think, like, pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, pancreatic cancer.
He went into surgery, and he's cancer-free. He's in remission.
Yep, that's
so
good.
So that was good.
Yep.
Tim divorced his abusive wife, got essentially, like, 95% custody of the daughters.
Yep.
So they can only see the wife, like, 4 times a month.
4 hours a month.
4 hours a month, and then he's, with the new wife with a better house and 7 kids in the house, but I think the house is more than sufficient.
Yeah, whatever the case may be for that.
Right. And it looked cleaner overall,
Yeah.
so it's like, whatever. He seems to be really getting his shit together, thank God, ironically speaking. And I don't...
Oh, what did he do for his day job? He delivered flowers.
Yes, he was a florist.
So the reason that I found out... So I actually found out what the occupation was and where he actually worked based on the outside of the building. And
this is also not DDoSing. This shit's so easy to find nowadays.
It's not. I just went on to Google Maps.
Right.
I literally went onto Google and I typed in floral shops near me. They made a mention of the town, so I kind of had an idea of what town it was. And then I looked up the floral shops in that town, and I found a picture on Street View that matched the place where he drove up to in that one scene.
Right.
So that's how I found out. It's actually really easy.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall...
But overall, the documentary was decent. I've seen this documentary a number of times. I could probably repeat the whole thing.
I have too. The first part of it, Peanut Gallery and I were dying laughing.
But then you kind of get deep into it. It's like, oh man, this is wow.
And then it's like, okay, at least there's a good resolution for everybody except for the egregious piece of shit mom, but
whatever.
Who cares? I hope she dies in hell.
That's neither here nor there.
Right. So that is like our standard Bible study. I think we'll probably have more of a traditional one when we come back.
Yes, and we will give you guys a mention as to what that's going to look like. But when we come back from our break,
we're going to be doing
some wrestling lessons with Tiger High. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah.